Okay, thank you. So, I want to talk a little bit about the two sides of this work today and try to tie that together to one. There's a lot of people that called and it's like, okay, I'm seeing this, what do I do with it? Yeah, I'm in script, and there's a lot of people who have the I'll never get it right, and this is not going to work for me, and I don't have what it takes to break through this because I'm not in the habit of breaking through things or solving things or fixing things, so I'm not able to do it, and there's a lot of that going on, and we haven't ever addressed that specifically in previous work, so this is where we're starting into the new stuff. We've been going all the way in the new stuff, but let's tie it together. There's sort of a material, humanhood side to this, and that's what we've been doing mostly so far, learning what our scripts are, learning our resistance behaviors. We'll add our fantasy scripts and fantasy script behaviors to those lists. That's all about seeing it clearly, getting a clear understanding of what the problem is, the nature of the problem, what is my fear is the important thing. And incidentally, if we always catch the glitch, we can always take that half a step back and transcend the script in the sense that we step back to where we're looking at the script rather than being caught up in it, and our lives get a lot better because we're not in meltdowns. We don't have to leave situations. We're not destroying relationships and blowing careers and doing stuff like that. So it helps a whole lot to get to manage your script, and that's what the week 4 work in the book is about, is managing script. But there's nothing new there. Managing script, we'll do that work right now. Managing script means recognizing the glitch, identifying the script, taking responsibility for it, and in doing this process, you're looking at it instead of being caught up in it, and that's huge. That's going to knock a great deal of the energy out, but that doesn't get rid of script. The fact is that the fear still maintains, it just doesn't win as much, and the fact is that eventually, over 10 lifetimes or 20 lifetimes, that would get rid of script, because if you continue having the fear come up and you continue to see that you don't die, eventually it's going to get through to the entire being that it's not a killer anymore, and it's going to deflate and deflate and deflate, but we don't want to erode it over 10 lifetimes. We'd like to mop it up before Christmas. Okay, so what do we do when we... That wasn't where I was going to go. Maybe it is. What do we do when we have the fear? All right, first of all, as I've said, and I'll just hit the points again briefly, fear is not yours, it's not mine, it's universal human beliefs. If we call that human universal belief, then we'd have hub. And that would be the hub of all my fears. So we'll call it human universal belief rather than vice versa, okay? So that's the hub. That's human universal belief. We can remember it now. We got an acronym. It's labeled. Now we know what it is. In any event, my fear is not mine. It's Hub's, and it's being radiated at me, and my conditioning and my past life experiences and everything else have resulted in my accepting that fear. And there is, first of all, no truth in the fear. But more important, there is no power in the fear. The only power in Hub is when it's believed. It's when you accept it. Those beliefs, there are just so many beliefs out there that you're not accepting that have no power over you. In fact, in this room, there's 30 of us in the workshop, and we probably have together between us 60 or 70 different scripts, and all of us are probably affected by 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of them. So there's 50 or 60 scripts that are not affecting you. They have no power over you. Do you see the fears that universal consciousness has in all these other areas don't happen to be picked up with me because I've been sensitized to this particular narrow little area of belief. So I'm accepting a certain set. So they're not mine. Now, when I'm experiencing, well, we don't even need to go there. If I'm experiencing fear, the smart thing for me to do is to identify it. Which script is it? And then immediately it's an old friend, something we now know we've been doing all our lifetime in many of them, and clearly part of Hub, and we can begin to drop all concern about it. Now, to destroy the fear, though, has to be a deep-seated understanding of truth. I mean, the truth that is the flip side of that fear has to be so deep-seated that we could call it realized, as in made real. Now, I know what the truth is about this fear, and I have to know it to the point that I own it, that it's part of me, a bigger part of me than the fear, and now the fear is on the way out. And notice that Lee didn't do anything about the fear, and Lee didn't do anything about the power of God. All Lee did was tune in that direction rather than this direction. Tune into the spiritual being rather than the human experience, okay? And that's where the wrap-up, the answer to this whole thing happens, and it's, as far as I know, the only way that the wrap-up happens. So, we need to combat every script. And I think I'm going to start a collection of scripts, and maybe I'll put it on the website so you guys can all add your own scripts, and then we'll start adding the solutions to them, and we'll actually get a list of these. But we don't really need to do that. We don't need to be that. The specificity helps a whole lot, and Joel keeps talking about specificity. The specific truth that denies the specific lie, okay? Yes, please.
Can I give a quick example of that?
Please do. Jump in.
I used to attend Agape, and I had read a lot of Joel, and I had read, I'm eternal and I'm immortal. I am an eternal and I'm immortal. And I was sitting in there, and I'd done the script work, I can't tell you how many times, and Reverend Michael said from the podium, you are eternal and you are immortal. And it clicked with me. It's like, okay, if that's true, and if I'm God, then I can't die. And it was like, bam. It was like so much of the script belief just went. Because the fear, the end fear is I will die. And it was like that basic truth knocked out so much the lie.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about, and that's what we're trying to get. And it's important. The problem is that, I, Lee, am not eternal and immortal. The human being, the human experience is not eternal and immortal. It's going to wrap up in 20 years, probably. I don't know, it might be 220, doesn't matter. Birth is a deadly experience. The human experience is going to end, all right? So I am not eternal and immortal. God as Lee is eternal and immortal, because God is eternal and immortal. Okay? So and the spiritual being is the God as part of it. And Lee is the concept that the God as part happens to have because it's listening to hub. I like that word, hub. It's listening to the hub. It's hooked up to the hub. It's a spoke on the hub. So let's talk. We've already talked once about the nature of consciousness, a little bit about what consciousness is, and we've talked a lot about the nature of hub. last week, but let's talk about really what the nature of God is. And I'm going to really strongly suggest there's a book out there, there's 2 books out there. And the reason they're out there is because they're really useful information. They were written for this group in different incarnations. One is Dream On, and the other is Pointing at the Moon. Pointing at the Moon, in fact, was written through work in 2 different workshops. We worked on it and read on it, talked about it, and added to it and changed it and such like. So Pointing on the Moon, that's just a description of spirit. It's an introduction to spiritual consciousness. And it will just answer so many questions and bring forth so many spiritual principles and teach so much. And the other one, Dream On, is a really good collection of insights into the nature of consciousness, which will help you understand quite a bit what I'm saying here. And they're available online through Leelaa.com in PDF form. You can just hit the PDF form and print them. I think Dream On is like $6 there. So I really suggest you look at some of these so that you have a foundation for the truth, because that will provide the foundation for what we're going to talk about today and for the kind of truth you need to understand in order to watch your scripts dissolve. So let's talk just a little bit about the nature of God. First of all, God is consciousness, and within consciousness is what I like to think of as mind, is the bubble of this stuff that we're seeing, this 3D stuff. It's the within consciousness, an aspect of consciousness, a bubble in consciousness, is this what we call reality that we're seeing that includes space and time and materiality. It's sort of the material bubble. And it includes space and time. And we won't worry about what's in the bubble. The point I'm making is that God itself is outside of time. There's no time where God is. Time is a little bubble. And there's a nice example of when you dream at night, you create an entirely different period of time and space within your dream that's totally independent of this one and unrelated to it in all sorts of ways. And that's what the kind of thing that Dream On is about. It will talk to you about that. But the point is that God is outside of time and space, and therefore there's nothing happening in God. It's done. It's finished. There's absolutely nothing happening in God. It's already fulfilled. It's the only thing there is, and it's completely done. It's completely finished. There's nothing undone, nothing that it has to accomplish. It, by its very nature, is fulfilled, is complete, and we start anthropomorphizing, but it's worse than that. We start making up stories about it when we talk about it being love. But the story that I have, because I can't talk about something or think about it without having some limiting concept, which isn't true, is that it is this being of timelessness, eternal being, this being of timelessness, the being of always nowness, that is in a state of perfect bliss. Because, of course, there is no other power than it, there is no other place than it, there is nothing else than this, so there is nothing to disturb it. It's a state of perfect bliss. Okay? Now, this is what is individualizing as you. This timeless, eternal, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, it has all knowledge, it knows everything because it is everything. This omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, blissful being is what has individualized as you. Okay? Now, if you are 100% in touch with that, how could you possibly have any script? You are this omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, all power, know everything, blissful. The only being in the world. There's nothing else that can approach you or attack you or do anything to you. There is nothing else. How could you possibly have a script? It's inconceivable that what is God has a script. Okay? So, if I'm in God consciousness, if I've realized God consciousness, which means realized my spiritual being nature, I'm script-free while I'm realizing that. Okay? Can't not be. So, the difficulty seems to be that I'm never, while wearing a body, and confused by the hub into believing that this body is real and this finiteness is real and these limited concepts are real and this stuff around me is real and all that. While I'm in that, I don't have this 100% realization of the nature of God, i.e. myself. And so I am available to have these scripts. So what I have to do is go back and look at the particular scripts I have and address them individually against my nature and see the impossibility of them, and perhaps do this several times, perhaps do this over and over again as if I were programmed to believe this and I needed to be deprogrammed, as if I belonged to a cult and needed to be deprogrammed. The hub cult, the cult called humanity, the cult that believes all these false beliefs that has in fact indoctrinated me into believing I am this human being separate from God. Okay, we're in a cult. We've been indoctrinated. We're continually re-indoctrinated. And the work is to break that indoctrination by realizing the presence of God. And notice that it's no longer necessary for you to tear up your script. I don't have the power to do that. I don't have to be good enough to do it. It doesn't matter whether I've ever been successful at doing anything or not. I don't have to tear up my script. I don't have to do anything. Because what I think I need to accomplish, for you people on the phone are very handicapped, because I've got one hand down here in humanity and I've got the other hand up above my head in God, and you guys can't see it, so I'll try to remember.
Very impressive, too.
I'll try to remember to say that. When I'm in God consciousness, well, now that I clarified that, I forgot the point. We just lost something. Somebody needs to block their phone. Thank you. So, the point is that to the extent that I'm locked into human consciousness, I've got trouble with this. To the extent that I'm realizing my true nature, I don't have trouble with this. But the specific beliefs that are my fears are so deeply integrated into this being that they need to be looked at specifically, and we need to specifically find the script and specifically identify the truth and specifically know that and work at that until it is real, until we have realized it. Yes, a hand.
I was just thinking when you're talking about it that it seems like one of the problems is that, so when we're talking about the human, the hub, and it, like, you kind of talk about it one way where we hear that and we believe it, but I think, like, I'm realizing that one of the other problems is that since everybody believes it, then on a human level, it's actually confirmed for me. Like, I believe whatever it is, like, human consciousness says that I should have a different job. Women that are 42 and have a, whatever it is, and then what happens is that it's hard for me to not believe that's not real if I don't believe it's real. This would be an example. Or I should look different. I should do this, I should do that. But I feel like what the trick is that you say, like, that's not true, but yet it's because everybody's believing that it is reinforced then. So it's not just that it's coming at you and you believe it. If you stay in that human place, it's actually confirmed over and over and over.
Exactly.
People are saying, why do you have that job?
Exactly.
That's so weird that you're a waitress. Or why, or why do you, if you would only lose weight, or if you would only that. So it's like to realize that it's not real, you actually have to, like, take yourself out of that entire set. Because if you just don't believe yourself,
well, but that's exactly the reason that we're talking about increasing your meditation practice and increasing your exposure to truth, read the books, listen to tapes of masters, work on your consciousness, devote more time to that consciousness. Oh, that brings up a great little point here. Joel said, things we have to remember every day. 1, the nature of God, the kind of God you have. You can't go to God for things. God doesn't have things. God is spirit. God doesn't have stuff. Stuff is a human interpretation of the spiritual things that God is. You can't expect God to start doing anything. God is outside of time. God is done. God is fulfilled. God is finished. So are you. Fulfilled, finished, complete, perfect. So do not expect God to do something for you. God is already doing it, being it. All right, that's the first thing. The second thing you must remember every day is God must be realized as omnipresence. Not only is that the nature of God, but God is everything and everybody and everywhere always. God is here. Okay? Right now. And the third thing to remember every day is that God is the only power. The tape I happen to be listening to this week. So, write those down and make a list of them and look at them every day. Realize them every day. Or remember them every day. Remember them several times a day. Remind yourself. Remind yourself that this is a lie. And pointing at the moon will help in some areas of this because it talks a whole lot about those 3 levels of consciousness, about materialism and about metaphysics and about mysticism. Okay? And we need to break the materialistic consciousness. We need to, in fact, break the metaphysical consciousness as well and arrive at the mystical consciousness.